caught writing about her curves. The alien princess's fiery reaction left me speechless. The secret journal observation deck of Lumina 7 hummed with the quiet energy of distant stars. Dr. Cale Winters pressed his palm against the cool glass, watching the binary suns dance their eternal waltz millions of kilometers away. He should have been reviewing tomorrow's cultural exchange protocols, but instead, his thoughts drifted, as they always did these days to her. Saren O'Hara moved through the research station, like liquid moonlight, her presence transforming every sterile corridor into something almost magical. Cale had tried to maintain professional distance, truly he had, but somewhere between their third diplomatic briefing and the moment she'd laughed at his clumsy attempt to pronounce a Xylarian greeting, he'd been lost. His journal lay open on the console beside him, filled with observations that had long since crossed the line from academic to personal. He'd written about the way her silver hair caught the station's artificial lighting, how her golden eyes reflected genuine curiosity when she listened, the graceful way she moved in the lower gravity sections, page after page of careful notes that chronicled his growing fascination. The door chimed. Cale barely registered it, absorbed in capturing the memory of this afternoon's meeting, the way Saren had tilted her head while considering a complex trade agreement, a gesture so distinctly her that it made his chest ache. Dr. Winters, a familiar voice made him freeze. His head snapped up. Saren stood in the doorway, her azure skin almost luminous in the starlight, but she wasn't looking at him. Her gaze was fixed on the console, on his open journal, on words he'd never intended anyone to see. "I apologize for the intrusion," she said, her melodic accent careful and measured. "You left your access card in the conference room. I came to return it, but I seem to have." She paused, her golden eyes finally meeting his, interrupted something. Kel's heart thundered. How much had she seen? The careful sketches he'd made of Xylarian cultural symbols, the poetry he'd attempted in her language, worse the entry from yesterday where he'd described watching her present to the council, so commanding and beautiful that he'd forgotten to breathe. It's just research notes," he stammered, moving to close the journal. The motion only drew her attention back to it. Research. Her tone was unreadable. She stepped further into the room, and Cale noticed the subtle shift in her posture. Something he'd learned meant she was processing something significant. Is that what humans call observations about the curve of someone's jaw? Or how their voice sounds like music from a world you've never visited? The blood drained from his face. She had read it. She'd read all of it. The confrontations. Biodome Gardens seemed like neutral territory, though nothing felt neutral about the crackling energy between them. Saren had suggested they speak privately, away from the curious eyes of the station's mixed crew. Now, surrounded by bioluminescent flowers from a dozen worlds, Cale felt more exposed than ever. "In all my years as a diplomatic liaison," Saren began, her voice tight with controlled emotion, "I have never been studied quite so thoroughly." She turned to face him fully, her silver hair rippling with the movement. The artificial moonlight of the dome caught the angles of her features, and Cale hated that even now, even mortified. He noticed how stunning she was. "Saren, he struggled for words that wouldn't make this worse. "I never meant for you to see that. It was private. It was invasive," she suggested, her golden eyes flashing. "Presumptuous. Did you think I wouldn't notice you watching me, Dr. Winters? That I wouldn't feel the weight of your attention? During every meeting, every briefing, the accusation stung because it was true. I'm sorry. I crossed a line. Multiple lines." He ran a hand through his dark hair, agitated. "My observations started professionally, I swear, understanding Xylarian body language, cultural cues. It's part of my job. But then, she stepped closer, and he caught the faint scent of ozone that always accompanied her, something uniquely Xylarian, that he'd committed to memory like everything else about her. "Then you became more than a research subject." The confession escaped before he could stop it. "You became the first thing I thought about when I woke up, and the last thing on my mind before sleep. You became every distraction, every moment of wondering what you thought, what you felt, whether you ever—" He stopped himself, but barely. Saren's expression shifted, something flickering behind her anger. "Whether I ever what? Whether you ever thought about me," he finished quietly, meeting her gaze. Even a fraction as much as I think about you. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the gentle hum of the dome's environmental systems and the whisper of alien leaves. Saren's composure wavered. He could see it in the slight parting of her lips, the way her fingers curled and uncurled at her sides. You want honesty? Her voice dropped lower, more intimate. I did notice, Kale. How could I not? Your eyes followed me everywhere. During the trade negotiations, I could feel your gaze like warmth on my skin. When I spoke, you listened as though my words held the secrets of the universe. She paused, and something vulnerable crossed her features. In Xylarian culture, such focused attention is significant. It speaks of deep interest, of potential bonding consideration. Kel's breath caught. I didn't know, clearly. A hint of something amusement, tenderness, touched the corner of her mouth. But the secrecy, Kale, the hidden observations, that troubles me. Among my people, attraction is declared openly, celebrated. Your journals feel like you were keeping me trapped in pages, studied, but not truly seen. That's not. He stepped closer, desperate to make her understand. You were never trapped. If anything, I was. Trapped by protocols. By the fear of causing an interstellar incident. By the terror that you'd look at me exactly the way you're looking at me now. And how am I looking at you? Their faces were inches apart now, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns in her azure skin. Like constellations unique to her alone. Like I've hurt you, he whispered. And like maybe, despite that, you don't entirely hate me. Cultural crossroads, tension broke like a dam releasing. Saren turned away, moving toward a bench beneath a cascading fountain of water from Europa. When she sat, it was with the fluid grace that had first caught his attention weeks ago. After a moment's hesitation, Kale joined her, maintaining a respectful distance. Tell me about human courtship, Saren said finally, her voice softer now. Help me understand why you hid your feelings. Kale exhaled slowly, gathering his thoughts. Humans, we're complicated about attraction. We're taught to be cautious, especially in professional settings. Revealing feelings carries risk rejection, awkwardness, ruining working relationships. We observe, we wonder, we write in private journals instead of speaking our hearts. He smiled ruefully. We're probably more cowardly than your people. Not cowardly, Saren corrected gently. Careful, there's a difference. She traced a pattern on the bench between them, not quite touching his hand. Xylarians approach bonding differently. When we feel drawn to someone, we declare it publicly. There's a ritual we call it the illumination. We stand before our community and speak our attraction aloud, offering the other person the choice to explore or decline. That sounds terrifying, Kale admitted. For the first time since the confrontation began, Saren laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. It is, sometimes, but it's honest. There's freedom in that honesty, in knowing exactly where you stand. And if someone wrote pages about you in secret, Kale asked, what would that mean in your culture? Saren's expression grew thoughtful. It would be seen as obsessive, perhaps, but also romantic, in a way. The effort to understand someone so deeply, to notice the small things. She finally met his eyes again. That entry you wrote about my presentation to the council, you mentioned how I adjust my hair when I'm nervous, how I shift my weight when I disagree, but remain diplomatic. No one has ever noticed me so completely. How could they not? The words escaped before he could stop them. You're extraordinary. The air between them charged again, but differently now, less anger, more possibility. Saren reached out, her fingers hovering near his. May I? She asked, very Xylarian in her directness. Kale nodded, not trusting his voice. Her touch was cool against his skin, her fingers tracing the lines of his palm with gentle curiosity. Your hands are so warm, she murmured. I've wondered what they would feel like. His heart raced. You've wondered about me? Constantly, she admitted, her golden eyes locked on their joined hands. Why do you think I attended every single briefing you led, even the optional ones? Why I found reasons to walk past the observation deck during your shifts? She looked up at him, vulnerability and strength mingling in her expression. I read your words tonight, Kale, and I was angry, but I was also relieved, because I thought I was alone in this feeling. This pull across our different worlds. Cal's thumb brushed across her knuckles. marveling at the softness of her skin. "You're not alone. You've never been alone in this." They sat together as the biodome cycled through its artificial night, talking for hours. She told him about Xylarian philosophy, about how her people viewed connection as the fundamental force of the universe. He shared human poetry, trying to explain the romantic traditions of 1,000 Earth cultures. They laughed about misunderstandings, debated differences, and slowly, carefully, built a bridge between their worlds. When the dome's lights began their slow brightening toward artificial dawn, neither had moved from the bench. Their hands remained intertwined, a silent promise of possibility. "Where do we go from here?" Kale asked quietly. Saren smiled, radiant and certain. "Forward, together, but this time, no more secrets." The gravity between stars. 3 days had passed since their conversation in the biodome. 3 days of stolen glances during meetings and carefully professional exchanges that fooled no one. The entire station seemed to sense the shift between them, though neither had spoken of it publicly. Kale found himself gravitating toward wherever Saren was, and she, in turn, seemed to appear in his peripheral vision with increasing frequency. Tonight, the station's astronomy club had organized a viewing of the Perseid 7 meteor shower, a spectacular event visible only once every 50 years. Kale stood at the observation deck's railing, ostensibly checking the recording equipment, but really just hoping she would come. "The equipment seems functional." Saren's voice came from behind him, warm with amusement. "Unless you've checked those same calibrations 6 times for accuracy." He turned to find her closer than expected, dressed in the flowing silver garment she wore for evening events. The starlight played across her azure skin, and Kale had to remind himself to breathe. Just being thorough. Of course, her smile suggested she knew exactly what he was doing. Very professional. They stood together in comfortable silence as other crew members filtered in, finding seats and preparing refreshments. The observation deck filled with quiet conversation and anticipation. Kale was hyper-aware of Saren beside him, the small space between them feeling both vast and non-existent. The first meteors began their blazing descent across the viewport, brilliant streaks of gold and white against the velvet darkness. The crowd murmured appreciatively, but Kale barely noticed. He was watching Saren's reflection in the glass, the wonder on her face as she tracked each shooting star. "In Xylarian tradition," she said softly, "meant only for him, meteor showers are considered moments of cosmic alignment, moments when the universe reveals what it's been quietly arranging." "What do you think it's revealing now?" Kale asked, matching her quiet tone. Before she could answer, the station's lights flickered. Once, twice, then completely dark. Emergency lighting kicked in with a dull red glow as the system rerouted power. The crowd stirred nervously, but the captain's voice came through the intercom, calm and reassuring. "Minor fluctuation in the auxiliary grid. All systems nominal. We'll have full power restored in approximately 10 minutes." In the darkness, with everyone's attention on the captain's announcement, Kale felt Saren's hand find his. Her fingers laced through his with deliberate intention, and his heart thundered so loudly he was certain she could hear it. "Kale," she whispered, her voice barely audible beneath the ambient noise. "I need to tell you something." He turned toward her, their faces close in the shadows. "What is it?" "I've been trying to follow your human caution, to be careful and professional, but I'm Xylarian. We don't orbit around our feelings, we collide with them." Her golden eyes caught the emergency lighting, luminous and intense. "I don't want to be careful anymore. I don't want to pretend that every moment away from you doesn't feel like wasted time." The confession struck him with physical force. "Saren, let me finish," she continued, her grip on his hand tightening. "Since reading your journal, since our conversation, I've been mapping my own feelings, and I've realized that what I feel for you, it's not curiosity about another species or intellectual fascination with cultural differences. It's you, the way you listen like every word matters, how you notice the small things, the gentleness in your strength." She paused, vulnerability flooding her features. "I'm drawn to you in ways that transcend diplomacy and research, and everything we're supposed to be to each other." Cal's free hand rose to cup her face, his thumb tracing the elegant line of her cheekbone. "I've been terrified," he admitted, "terrified of wanting something that seemed impossible. But standing here with you, feeling this, He searched for the right words. You're not impossible. You're inevitable. Like gravity. Like the stars aligning, you're the pull I can't and don't want to resist. The emergency lights cast half her face in shadow, half in crimson glow. She leaned into his touch, her eyes drifting closed for a heartbeat. Then don't resist, she whispered. When she opened her eyes again, the question in them was clear. Cale answered by closing the distance between them, his lips meeting hers with a gentleness that belied the intensity of feeling behind it. The kiss was tentative at first, exploratory, careful to people from different worlds learning each other's language through touch. Saren's skin was cool beneath his warm hands, a contrast that sent shivers through them both. She made a soft sound, surprise and pleasure mingled and deepened the kiss. Her fingers traced up his arms, across his shoulders, finally threading through his hair. The universe narrowed to this, her taste, faintly sweet like starfruit. The silk of her hair, the way she fit against him as though their differences were designed to complement, rather than separate. A new beginning. The station lights flickered back to life, but Cale and Saren remained wrapped in each other, unwilling to break apart. Around them, the meteor shower continued its spectacular display, but they had found their own cosmic event in each other's arms. Finally, breathlessly, they separated just enough to rest their foreheads together. Saren's smile was radiant, her usual composure beautifully disheveled. That was worth every moment of careful caution it took to get here, Cale suggested, his thumb tracing her jawline. I was going to say profoundly insufficient, she teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief and warmth. I believe we need significantly more research data. He laughed, the sound free and genuine. Around them, the other crew members were too absorbed in the meteor shower to notice their embrace in the corner of the observation deck. But Cale knew that wouldn't last. By morning, the entire station would know. What happens now? He asked, echoing his question from the biodome, but with entirely different context. Saren pulled back enough to meet his eyes fully. Now, we stop hiding. I want to do this the right way, a blending of our traditions. Tomorrow, I'll perform the illumination before the station council, declaring my intention to pursue bonding with you. It's important to me to honor my culture. And after that, she said, her fingers playing with the collar of his shirt, you take me on what humans call a proper day dinner. Conversation, perhaps more of this. She kissed him again, softer this time, a promise rather than a question. When they finally returned to Kel's quarters in the early hours of the morning, he retrieved his journal from where he'd hidden it after the incident. Saren watched with curiosity as he opened to a blank page. What are you doing? She asked. Starting a new section, he explained. One we write together. Not observations from a distance, but shared experiences. Our story, in both our voices. Saren settled beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. She took the pen from his hand and wrote in flowing Xylarian script before translating. Day 1 of our intentional collision. Cale added beneath it. The moment we stopped orbiting and started falling. They continued writing through the night, trading the pen back and forth, documenting not what they noticed from afar, but what they discovered together. Her head eventually came to rest on his shoulder, his arm wrapped around her waist, and the words flowed like starlight between them. When the station's morning cycle began, they were still there, surrounded by the evidence of their connection, pages filled with joint observations, sketches of their intertwined hands, notes about the differences and similarities they were learning to navigate. The binary suns rose beyond the viewport, bathing them in golden light. I should go prepare for the illumination ceremony, Saren said, though she made no move to leave. And I should prepare my response, Cale replied, equally reluctant to break their closeness. What do I say when you declare your intentions? She smiled, pressing a kiss to his temple. Whatever feels true to you. Humans may be cautious with their hearts, but when you speak yours, Cale, it's more eloquent than any ritual. After she left, Cale stood at his window, watching the station come to life. His journal lay open on the desk, no longer a secret record of longing, but a shared chronicle of becoming. He thought about the confrontation in the biodome, how what had seemed like an ending had become their beginning. Later that afternoon, before the assembled council and crew, Saren would stand in her ceremonial robes and speak the traditional words of illumination. She would declare her attraction to Cale Winters, human xenoanthropologist, openly and without reservation, and he would respond not with Xylarian tradition, but with human honesty. I see you, Saren O'Hara, not as a subject of study or a diplomatic liaison, but as the person who taught me that the space between worlds is not a distance to overcome, but a connection to celebrate. The crew would applaud. Some would be surprised, others would claim they'd seen it coming. But none of that would matter as much as the moment after, when Saren would take his hand, and they would walk together through the station as partners, no longer hidden or cautious, but boldly, beautifully themselves. In the days that followed, they would navigate the complexities of an interspecies relationship, the curious looks, the bureaucratic complications, the thousand small adjustments required when two different worlds attempted to merge. There would be challenges and misunderstandings, moments of frustration and cultural collision. But there would also be this, shared laughter in the biodome, stolen kisses in the observation deck, journals filled with joint dreams and discoveries. There would be Cale learning Xylarian star poetry to whisper against her skin, and Saren mastering human dancing to surprise him. There would be late nights spent talking about everything and nothing, building a vocabulary of touch and trust that transcended language. And through it all, there would be the fundamental truth they'd both discovered, that sometimes the best research, the most profound understanding, comes not from careful observation at a distance, but from the courage to step close, to collide, to let yourself be changed by the very thing you're trying to understand. As the binary suns set on their first official day together, Cale wrote one final entry in their shared journal. Note to future researchers: love is not about studying from afar. It's about diving in and discovering that the unknown is not something to fear, but someone to cherish. Saren read it, smiled, and added her own postscript in elegant Xylarian script. And sometimes, being caught is the beginning of being found. The end.